Commander Vextar dragged his broken body through the grand doors of the Galactic Council chambers. His cybernetic leg made sharp clicking sounds on the smooth crystal floor with each painful step. Deep scars covered every inch of his green reptilian skin, each one a memory from the terrible wars he had fought in the outer rim of the galaxy. Entire star systems had burned under his command, and he had seen horrors that would drive most beings insane. But today he carried news of something that frightened him more than any enemy he had ever faced. The massive chamber stretched out before him like a cathedral of power. Hundreds of alien representatives sat in floating chairs arranged in perfect circles around the central speaking platform. Their species came from every corner of the galaxy, some with tentacles that writhed constantly, others with crystalline bodies that caught the light, and still others that were pure energy contained in mechanical shells. They were the rulers of the known universe, and they believed nothing could challenge their authority. Vextar limped to the center platform, his damaged vocal cords producing a rough, grinding sound as he began to speak. Honored counselors of the galaxy, I stand before you today with urgent news. I have spent months observing a species on the third planet orbiting the star you call Sol. These creatures, these humans, possess military capabilities that will change everything we know about warfare. A wave of dismissive chatter filled the chamber. Council leader Mortuck, a massive being with dozens of purple tentacles, waved several appendages in the air with obvious annoyance. His translator device made his thoughts clear to everyone present. Commander Vextar, your service record shows great bravery and skill. But surely you must be mistaken. Our intelligence reports tell us that Earth barely discovered nuclear weapons a few decades ago. They have not even achieved faster than light travel. They are centuries away from being any kind of threat to our civilization. Vextar activated the holographic projector built into his cybernetic arm. Grainy images filled the air above the platform, showing scenes of human warfare throughout their bloody history. The assembled aliens leaned forward in their seats, studying the primitive battles with mild curiosity. Look closely at what you see, Vextar urged them. Here, a human soldier named June throws himself on an explosive device to save his squad mates, knowing it will tear his body apart. There, a warrior called Min carries 3 wounded comrades through enemy fire for over 2 kilometers, refusing to leave them behind even when ordered to retreat. Watch this female human named Sue lift a steel beam that should be impossible for her species to move, driven by desperation to save children trapped beneath. The hologram shifted to show another scene of combat. This soldier, Wu, defended a single building for 3 days and nights without sleep, food, or reinforcement. When rescue finally arrived, they found him still fighting, surrounded by the bodies of over 50 enemies. He had turned the building into a fortress using nothing but broken furniture and debris. Several council members made sounds of mild interest, but Vextar could see they still did not understand. He changed the holographic display to show a narrow bridge over a deep river. A lone human soldier stood in the center, firing a primitive projectile weapon at advancing enemy forces. This human is called Jean, Vextar said, his voice growing more desperate. He volunteered to hold this bridge alone so his unit could escape to safety. He knew with absolute certainty that he would die. Our psychological analysis shows that most species would experience overwhelming terror in such a situation. But look at his face. The hologram zoomed in on the human's features. Despite being surrounded by enemies, despite knowing death was moments away, Jean was smiling. Not the desperate grin of madness, but the calm, peaceful smile of someone who had found meaning in sacrifice. They do not fight just for territory or resources like civilized species, Vextar continued, his scarred hands gesturing at the images. These humans die for abstract concepts that exist only in their minds. They call these ideas honor, freedom, justice, and family loyalty. They will sacrifice everything for beliefs that cannot be touched or measured. The chamber filled with the sound of alien laughter and dismissive comments. To these advanced beings, the human displays looked like the primitive struggles of animals. They saw crude weapons, basic tactics, and simple technology. They could not understand what Vextar was trying to tell them. You see only their current limitations, Vextar said, his voice rising with frustration. But you must understand how quickly they adapt and improve. In a single conflict on their world, I watched them evolve from cavalry charges with horses and swords to mechanized warfare with armored vehicles and aircraft. The transformation took less than 4 years. He changed the holographic display again, showing human military academies and training facilities. They study their defeats more carefully than their victories. Every failure becomes a lesson. Every weakness becomes something to strengthen. They learn from every species they encounter, taking the best ideas and making them better. The session continued for another hour, but Vextar could see that his words were falling on deaf ears. The council members saw only a primitive species with limited technology. They could not comprehend the psychological and tactical advantages that made humans so dangerous. As the session ended with polite but dismissive applause, Vextar gathered his holographic equipment and prepared to leave. His scarred hands shook with the knowledge of what was coming. Somewhere in the Sol system, those remarkable, terrifying humans were looking up at the stars and planning their next move. The galaxy was not ready for what they would become. Captain Greldock adjusted his massive bulk in the command chair of his mining vessel as it dropped out of hyperspace near the small blue planet called Earth. His thick, slug-like body oozed satisfaction as he reviewed the mineral survey reports on his data pad. This primitive world contained vast deposits of rare metals essential for building hyperspace engines, and the simple natives would surely be grateful to trade these worthless rocks for basic alien technology. The Prophet's Edge was a typical corporate mining ship, designed more for cargo capacity than combat. Its shields were standard commercial grade, and its weapons were nothing more than mining lasers hastily converted for defense against space pirates. Greldock had made this same type of deal with dozens of primitive worlds throughout his career, always returning to the corporate headquarters with massive profits and grateful praise from his superiors. "Begin standard first contact procedures," he ordered his crew in a bored voice. "Send the usual greeting message in their primitive radio frequencies. Offer them shiny trinkets in exchange for mining rights. These backwards creatures always accept the first offer." Navigation Officer Zisktel, a thin insectoid being with multiple arms, worked at his control station with practiced efficiency. His compound eyes suddenly widened in surprise as his sensors detected something impossible. "Captain," he said in a voice filled with confusion, "I am reading 3 vessels approaching from behind their moon. The ships appear to be of unknown design." Greldock's small eyes narrowed with annoyance. "Impossible. Our intelligence reports clearly stated that these humans barely achieved orbital flight capability. They have no interplanetary vessels, much less anything that could threaten a proper starship." The main viewing screen activated, showing 3 sleek vessels moving toward them with deadly grace. The ships were clearly built by human hands, but they incorporated design elements that should not have existed for centuries. Advanced hull plating gleamed with the distinctive shimmer of energy shields, and weapon ports were arranged in perfect tactical configurations along the vessel's sides. "Unknown vessel," came a transmission that made Greldock's blood run cold. The voice spoke in perfect galactic standard, the universal trade language that took most species decades to master. "This is Earth Defense Command. Admiral Hyun speaking. State your intentions in our solar system and prepare to be boarded for inspection." Zisktel's claws scraped frantically across his console as he ran emergency scans on the approaching ships. "Captain, this cannot be right. These vessels show technology signatures that match our own hyperspace-capable designs. Some of their systems appear to be even more advanced than our own." On the bridge of the lead human warship, Admiral Hyun stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching the alien vessel through the main display with cold, calculating eyes. Her uniform was crisp and professional, bearing rank insignia that had been designed using principles learned from captured alien military protocols. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency that spoke of months of intensive training and preparation. "Officer Young," she said to her tactical specialist, "what can you tell me about their defensive capabilities?" Lieutenant Young's fingers danced across his control panel, analyzing the alien ship with sensors that combined human innovation with reverse-engineered alien technology. "Standard commercial mining vessel, Admiral. Shields are basic defensive grade, probably designed to protect against asteroid impacts rather than weapons fire. Their armament consists of modified mining lasers that have been adapted for combat use, but the modifications appear rushed and inefficient." Admiral Hyun nodded with satisfaction. 4 months, Earth's scientists and engineers had worked around the clock to prepare for this moment. When long-range sensors first detected alien probe activity in their solar system, humanity had done what it always did when faced with a superior enemy. They had studied, learned, adapted, and prepared. Secret facilities around the world had reverse-engineered captured alien technology with breathtaking speed. Human military academies had developed entirely new courses in theoretical alien combat doctrine. Every major nation had contributed resources to Project Looking Glass, the crash program designed to understand and counter potential alien threats. "Begin boarding procedures," Admiral Hyun ordered. "I want a full inspection of their vessel and complete access to their computer systems." It is time we learned exactly what this Galactic Council thinks about humanity. The boarding action unfolded with precision that would have impressed even veteran alien military officers. Human Marines in powered armor moved through the corridors of the alien ship like shadows, their equipment a deadly combination of human tactical doctrine and captured alien technology. They had studied detailed scans of the vessel's internal layout, identifying critical systems and planning for 17 different possible resistance scenarios. Captain Greldock found himself face-to-face with Admiral Hyun in his own command center, surrounded by armed humans who moved with the quiet confidence of professional soldiers. Her dark eyes studied him with an intelligence that made his skin crawl with unease. When she spoke, her words were in perfect galactic trade language, pronounced with an accent he had never heard before. "Captain Greldock," she said, reading his name from his ship's registration records with casual ease, "Earth has many questions about your Galactic Council and their policies regarding primitive worlds. We strongly suggest that you cooperate fully with our investigation." As the interrogation began, neither Admiral Hyun nor Captain Greldock noticed a small maintenance pod quietly detaching itself from the underside of the mining vessel. The tiny craft's stealth systems, designed for avoiding detection during routine repairs, allowed it to slip away unnoticed as it activated its emergency hyperspace drive. Racing toward the nearest Council outpost, the pod carried news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The humans were no longer the primitive species described in intelligence reports. Earth had become something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The emergency alarm systems screamed through the halls of the Galactic Council headquarters as beings from across the galaxy rushed into the Great Assembly Chamber. Never before in the 1,000-year history of the Council had such an urgent meeting been called. The massive crystalline dome that housed their government buzzed with panic and confusion as reports continued flooding in from every corner of known space. Councillor Velthari's purple tentacles twisted and coiled around each other as she read the incoming messages on her data pad. Her species had evolved from ocean creatures, and the writhing of her appendages showed the extreme stress she was experiencing. Each new report brought more impossible news that challenged everything the Council believed about the primitive world called Earth. "This cannot be happening," she whispered to herself, her translator device spreading her words to nearby Council members. "Human warships in the Vega system. Human forces attacking our mining operations near Alpha Centauri. Human vessels demanding the surrender of our patrol fleets in sectors we have controlled for centuries." High Councillor Grex Nor stood at the center of the chamber, his tall crystalline body pulsing with colors that shifted from deep blue confusion to bright red anger and back again. His species communicated emotions through these color changes, and right now his feelings were clear to everyone watching. The most powerful being in the known galaxy was afraid. "How is this possible?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the chamber's advanced sound systems. "Our intelligence reports clearly stated that these humans were centuries away from achieving hyperspace travel capability. They barely managed to reach their own moon with primitive rocket technology. How can they now be fielding advanced warships across multiple star systems?" The great doors of the chamber opened with a deep rumbling sound, and every head turned to watch as Commander Vextar entered the room. The old soldier moved slowly, his cybernetic leg clicking on the floor with each step. His scarred face showed no surprise at the chaos around him, only the grim satisfaction of someone whose warnings had been ignored for too long. "Honored counselors," Vextar said as he took his place at the speaking platform, "you are all making the same mistake that has cost countless military commanders their lives throughout galactic history. You looked at humanity's current technology level and assumed that represented their maximum potential capability." He activated his holographic projector, filling the air above the chamber with images of human spacecraft that defied every known principle of technological development. The ships were sleek and deadly, their hulls gleaming with advanced armor plating and bristling with weapon systems that incorporated design elements from dozens of different alien civilizations. "Humans do not simply use technology the way other species do," Vextar continued, his voice growing stronger as he warmed to his subject. "They consume it, tear it apart, understand how it works, and then rebuild it in ways that are better than the original. They see possibilities where we see limitations." The holographic display shifted to show detailed scans of human weapons systems. What had once been simple mining lasers designed for cutting through asteroids had been transformed into particle beam weapons with twice the power output of standard military equipment. Cargo containers meant for transporting goods had been converted into missile launching systems capable of overwhelming enemy defenses. Councillor Vectar of the Hegemony, a tall being with multiple arms and glowing red eyes, stood up from his floating chair with obvious agitation. But the timeline makes no sense whatsoever, he protested, his mechanical voice translator giving his words a sharp, metallic edge. Even with captured alien technology, they should require decades to understand and implement these systems. How have they achieved such advanced capabilities in mere months? Vextar's scarred face twisted into what might have been a smile, though the expression was difficult to read on his reptilian features. His mandibles clicked together in a sound that other species had learned meant amusement, though there was no humor in his eyes. You still fail to comprehend what makes humanity different from every other species in this galaxy, he said, gesturing for his aide to bring up the industrial production reports. Show them the real evidence of what we are facing. The holographic displays changed to show images of Earth's surface taken by long-range surveillance satellites. Every major landmass showed the same impossible transformation. Massive industrial complexes had sprung up seemingly overnight, their smokestacks reaching toward the sky like the fingers of some giant beast. Orbital shipyards floated in perfect formation around the planet, each one capable of producing warships at a rate that exceeded the combined output of most alien civilizations. Their entire planet has become a weapons factory, Vextar explained, his voice carrying the weight of terrible knowledge. Every human on their world is working toward the same goal. They sleep in shifts so that production never stops. They share technology freely between their nations without the patents and corporate restrictions that slow down other species. When humans decide to go to war, they do not fight as individuals or even as separate countries. They become a single, unified organism dedicated to victory. The chamber fell silent as the full implications of what they were seeing began to sink in. These were not the primitive creatures described in their intelligence reports. Humanity had transformed itself into something that challenged the very foundations of galactic civilization. But what do they want? Counselor Velthari asked, her tentacles now completely still with fear. Surely we can negotiate some kind of peaceful arrangement. Vextar's expression grew even more grim as he prepared to deliver the news that would change everything they thought they knew about warfare and diplomacy in their galaxy. Admiral Du stood perfectly still on the command bridge of the massive human warship Indomitable, his dark eyes focused on the tactical displays showing the battle raging in the space around them. The ship was the largest vessel humanity had ever constructed, a floating fortress that combined the best technology from dozens of different alien species with human innovation and determination. Through the reinforced windows of the bridge, he could see the final moments of another hegemony military base as it surrendered to human forces. The command center buzzed with quiet activity as dozens of staff officers worked at their stations, coordinating military operations across 40 different star systems simultaneously. It was a logistical nightmare that would have overwhelmed most alien civilizations, but humans had turned the complex task into a smooth, efficient process that amazed even their allies. Commander Ko approached the Admiral's position, her steps silent on the metal deck plating. Neural implant cables ran from ports behind her ears directly into the ship's tactical computer systems, allowing her to process information at superhuman speeds. Her face showed the slight strain that came from maintaining such an intense connection, but her voice remained clear and professional. Admiral Du, she reported, I have received confirmation from the Vegan Liberation Fleet. They achieved complete success in their mission objectives. All slave labor camps have been destroyed, and over 2 million beings have been freed from hegemony control. The local defense forces that surrendered are requesting immediate integration into our military command structure. Admiral Du nodded with grim satisfaction, though his expression remained serious. This was the same pattern that repeated itself wherever human forces engaged the enemy. Unlike the Galactic Council's armies, which conquered worlds to expand their territory and increase their power, human forces fought for an entirely different purpose. They came not as conquerors but as liberators. What is the status of our allied forces? He asked, turning to face Intelligence Officer Lee, who was monitoring communications from across the galaxy. Lee's fingers moved rapidly across her control panel as she updated the massive holographic display that dominated the center of the bridge. The three-dimensional map showed the current state of the war, with human-controlled territory marked in blue and enemy forces in red. But unlike traditional military maps, this display also showed something unprecedented in galactic warfare. Allied territory marked in green, representing species that had chosen to fight alongside humanity as equal partners. The results continue to exceed our expectations, Admiral, Lee reported with obvious pride in her voice. The Centauri shipyards have completed construction of their first squadron of hyperspace-capable warships. The design is entirely their own creation, but they incorporated our defensive shield improvements and requested our technical advisors to help with the weapon systems. She manipulated the holographic controls, zooming in on different sectors of the galaxy. The vegan engineers are sharing their advanced energy weapon technology with all Alliance members. Their plasma cannons are proving highly effective against hegemony armor plating. Meanwhile, the Altarian Industrial Consortium has requested complete technology transfers for our shipyard construction techniques. They want to build their own fleet production facilities. This was the nightmare scenario that kept Galactic Council leaders awake during their sleep cycles. Humans did not build empires in the traditional sense, where a dominant species controlled weaker civilizations through force and intimidation. Instead, they created genuine alliances based on mutual respect and shared benefits. Every species that joined the human cause became a true partner, with access to the same technology and the same voice in strategic decisions. Lieutenant Han, a young officer who had been rapidly promoted after his exceptional performance during the liberation of Proxima Station, approached with a data pad containing the latest casualty and logistics reports. His uniform still showed the scorch marks from recent combat, but his eyes held the quiet confidence that had become characteristic of human military personnel. "Admiral, the logistics reports show some remarkable developments," Han said, handing over the data pad. "Our casualty rates remain significantly below initial projections for operations of this scale. The new alliance formation tactics are proving incredibly effective in actual combat situations." Admiral Du studied the numbers with interest. Human military doctrine had evolved to incorporate the unique strengths of each allied species. Centauri pilots, with their natural ability to process multiple information streams simultaneously, served as squadron leaders for mixed fighter formations. Vegan engineers, whose species had evolved in high-radiation environments, could repair damaged systems in conditions that would kill most other beings. Altarian strategists, with their mathematical minds, calculated supply routes and troop movements with perfect precision. The combination of local knowledge from our allies with human tactical flexibility creates overwhelming advantages against enemy forces, Han continued. "When we attack a hegemony position, we do not go in blind. Our allied partners know the territory, understand the enemy's weaknesses, and can predict their likely responses. But the true measure of humanity's war machine was not visible in any tactical display or casualty report. In shipyards scattered across dozens of worlds, humans worked side by side with beings they had never met before the war began. Together they built not just weapons of destruction but tools for building a better future. Hospital ships that could manufacture medical supplies from raw asteroid materials. Colony vessels equipped with terraforming technology that humans shared freely with anyone who wanted it. Educational platforms that carried human knowledge to species that had been deliberately kept ignorant by their former masters." Admiral Du looked out at the stars beyond his bridge windows, knowing that somewhere in that vast darkness, the old powers of the galaxy were learning a terrible lesson about underestimating a species that refused to surrender its principles, even in the face of impossible odds. The great capital world of Nexus Prime had never fallen to enemy forces in over 1,000 years of galactic history. Its massive defense platforms could destroy entire fleets, and its orbital fortresses had enough firepower to crack planets in half. But as High Counselor Grex Nor stood in his crystal tower overlooking the city, he watched something that no military strategist had ever predicted. His own forces were surrendering without firing a single shot. The siege had lasted exactly 47 hours, but it had ended not because of superior human weapons or brilliant tactical maneuvers. Instead, ship after ship in the Council's mighty enforcement fleets had simply stopped fighting. Their captains sent messages to the approaching human vessels, requesting asylum and asking to join the human alliance. Entire squadrons of the galaxy's most advanced warships turned their weapons away from the enemy and toward their former commanders. Grexnor's crystalline body pulsed with colors of confusion and despair as he watched the final defense station lower its shields and welcome human boarding parties. His species had ruled the galactic government for centuries, and their technology was among the most advanced in known space. Yet they were losing the war not through military defeat, but through something far more dangerous: the power of ideas. "How did this happen?" he asked Admiral Kethmore, the only senior officer who had remained loyal to the Council. "Our forces were the best trained in the galaxy. Our ships were superior to anything humanity could build. Our soldiers swore oaths of absolute loyalty to the government." Kethmore's insectoid features twitched with bitter understanding as he manipulated the holographic display showing the collapse of their military forces. "We trained them to be perfect soldiers, High Counselor. We taught them to follow orders without question, to serve the state without doubt, to accept their place in the hierarchy without complaint. But we never taught them to think for themselves or question why they were fighting. The admiral paused, his compound eyes reflecting the light from the burning city below. When the humans began their broadcast transmissions months ago, everything changed. Instead of sending military propaganda or threatening messages like civilized conquerors, they did something we never expected. They shared their knowledge freely with anyone willing to listen. Grexnor moved closer to the window, watching as human transport ships landed in the government district. Soldiers emerged from the vessels, but they were not behaving like typical occupation forces. Instead of securing strategic positions or rounding up prisoners, they were distributing food and medical supplies to civilians who had been caught in the fighting. What kind of knowledge could possibly turn our most loyal forces against us? Grexnor demanded, his voice carrying the frustration of someone whose entire worldview was crumbling around him. Kethmore activated a recording device, playing back some of the human transmissions that had been flooding the galaxy for months. They broadcast their university lectures on philosophy and government. They shared historical documentaries showing how ordinary people could rise from poverty to positions of leadership through their own efforts. They transmitted entertainment programs that showed families living together in peace, where children could disagree with their parents without being executed, where citizens could criticize their government without disappearing in the night. The recordings showed humans of all ages and backgrounds participating in something called democratic elections, where leaders were chosen by the people they would serve rather than inheriting power through bloodline or taking it through force. They showed courts where even the poorest citizen could receive justice, schools where anyone could learn regardless of their species or social status, and hospitals where medical treatment was provided based on need rather than ability to pay. To species that have lived under our authoritarian rule for generations, these transmissions revealed possibilities they never knew existed, Kethmore continued, his voice heavy with the weight of understanding. Our soldiers began asking questions we had never prepared them to hear. Why should they fight to preserve a system that kept them in chains? Why should they die to protect the privileges of rulers who saw them as expendable? Why should they serve a government that offered them nothing but obedience and suffering? The great doors of the chamber opened, and Grexnor turned to see a familiar figure entering the room. Commander Vextar walked slowly across the polished floor, his cybernetic leg clicking with each step. The old soldier's scarred face showed no triumph or satisfaction, only the quiet dignity of someone who had finally been proven right after years of being ignored. Commander Vextar, Grexnor said, his voice barely above a whisper. You tried to warn us about humanity's military capabilities, but you never told us about this. Vextar approached the podium where he had once delivered his desperate warning about Earth's warriors, the same podium where the Council had dismissed his concerns with polite laughter. High Counselor, I told you that humans fight for abstract concepts like freedom and justice. I warned you that they turn every disadvantage into an opportunity. But I failed to explain the most dangerous thing about them. He paused, looking out at the city where human and alien beings were working together to restore order and provide aid to those in need. Humans believe that all intelligent life deserves the same rights they claim for themselves. They do not conquer to rule but to liberate. They do not fight to destroy their enemies but to turn them into friends. And once a being learns what freedom truly means, they will never willingly accept slavery again. As Vextar finished speaking, the sound of celebration could be heard from the streets below, where former enemies were embracing as equals in a galaxy that was being reborn.